Yeah, we're live. 7:27. You know, 7-ish. Tonight we're going to talk about, excuse me. Tonight we're going to talk about stroker motors and basically how cool it is to. This is a time-honored tradition of having way more displacement than you're letting on. So, back in the day, if you had a big block Chevy, where they were all 396s, even if they were 427s or 454s or 496s in the case of a big block Chevy, you could tell everybody, hey, look, this is just a little old 396. Oh, excuse me. And then with Ford big blocks, even better. You could, they could be 557 inches, and you could tell them that they were 429s. Oh, this is a 429 Thunderjet. Put the stock valve covers and all this stuff on it. You could tell them that, hey, it's just a little 429 T-Bird motor or whatever. So and then in the modern times, we have the Stroker LS motors. The thumbnail that I have up, and I'll show you guys that. We'll bring that up here in just a minute. In modern times, what you would do is tell everybody, oh yeah, this is a base, this is a stock 4.8. When in reality, it could obviously be anything factory. It could be a 5.3, a 5.7, a 6.0. It could be a 6.2, I guess. But it could be with an iron block. It could certainly be a 383. You could go nuts and make it a 4-inch bore. With these aluminum blocks, which is typically what people sleeve. I don't see people sleeving the iron blocks. Maybe people are doing that. I didn't think that was really a thing, but you guys let me know in the comments if that is a thing. All of the blocks that I've done any sleeving on, we did an aluminum LS6 block. The one in the thumbnail is actually an LS7 block, I believe. That was one that Brian Tooley did. And that particular one was a 454-inch stroker motor with cathedral port heads and a fast manifold and fairly conservative stuff, but stuff that worked very well because he put a lot of effort into it and knows what he's doing. That one made over 700 horsepower. So, but the thing is, it looks like you could tell people, hey, this is an LS6. And in my case, I could tell people there's an LS6 because I had an LS6 block. He would have a little more hard time convincing people. A guy that didn't know would think that it's an aluminum. You could tell it's an LS1 block if it's a guy that doesn't really know. Maybe he shouldn't be street racing anyways, and would know the difference between an LS7 block and an LS1 block. But honestly, when it's in this particular one, because this was like over 12-to-1 compression, but ran on pump gas, because of the dynamic compression, had lots of camshaft in it, had a good camshaft in it. Had a set of, I think that they were trick flow heads that had a lot of work done to them. He went over the list of things that were done to it. It was quite impressive. He sent me the motor and I did the testing on it. And he said, well, I think it might make 700. And I'm like, I don't know. That seems like a fairly tall order, but I have since come to listen to Brian when he says something that, oh, look, this is going to happen. I don't tell him no anymore very often because usually it does. And this is one of those instances where, hey, it's going to make this amount of power. Oh, okay, I don't think it's going to, and then it did. And then on the motor that I did, which is 468 inches, we had a big bore. We had a 4185 bore because we sleeved the block so we could put a good sized bore in it. And then we put I think it was a 4250 stroke crank in it. And because of the sleeve length, we could get away with that much stroke. We had the clearance that we need, and then we could run lots of good heads on it. We ran a lot of ported different LS3 heads on it. We ran some LS7 heads on it, and with a good combination like masked LS7 heads and a big camshaft and stuff, a big single plane intake manifold. I think that one was 60 or something like that. So it did well. So it's certainly possible. And Brian's motor was a motor that he made to go in a Corvette and drive around. It wasn't an all-out thing. You could certainly, in this displacement, make way more power than this. So people that are out there thinking, oh, my thing makes way more than that. Yeah, it does. We get that. That's fine. I'm just talking about the fact that you're not really going to make that, or it would be much more difficult to make 700 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds of torque with a 4.8. You could wind the 4.8 out really far, and you could spend lots and lots of money and make 2 horsepower per cubic inch or 3 horsepower per cubic inch if you did, everything dry sump and all that stuff. There's a few guys on the planet that could do that, but it wouldn't resemble anything that's a, reasonable driving kind of thing. So the extra cubic inches are a really good way to go. And I've always liked when you see that, when you see something that when a guy disguises it, it's like having the nitrous setup, a direct port fogger setup tucked up underneath the intake manifold and spray it so nobody can see it. And then they plumb the lines into the back. And if you're cool, you don't even have them visible. You have them plumbed in through a vacuum line or a water line or something. I like that little attention to detail, the extra attention to detail. And the stroker thing goes the same way. Like, let's make it look like a stock 4.8 and have it be a 5.8 or 6.8 or 7.8 or an 8.8, have it be something fairly substantial. And then, when you ride in it, it's really certainly impressive, because the nice thing about the added displacement is it makes more power everywhere. It's like boost. If you have immediate boost, you have, an immediate amount of torque gain, which is very good. And the stroker stuff does that too. That's the difference between, for Pontiac guys, driving a 326 versus driving a 455. The 455, even though like in the Trans Ams and stuff, like a Super Duty version, may not have made a lot of horsepower, but it had a lot of average power. So it did very well. And that's the benefit of having, big cubic inch stuff. And this LS was no different. This was a really impressive motor. The one that I have we'll take a look at that. I have the thumbnail up on. So we can see it's this one right here. Yeah, it did have quick flow heads. Pretty impressive. Although this, through the fast manifold, the 102 millimeter throttle body, this thing could have used more throttle body, I think. The fast manifold was ported. Some sort of custom cam. He even used, I think he went all out and I wonder if he would do that now again. He used LS7 1.8 rockers. So they had to fill and weld the original rocker bolt positions and then change them to use the 1.8 LS7 rockers, because they required a different bolt position to get the rocker geometry right. So, and then lots of porting, which Brian knows a great deal about. And so they had good programs for those trick flow heads. And so it, lots of head flow, compression, camshaft, you're working all in harmony and making good power. So it did very well. And like I said, the nice thing about the stroker is that then, because this was a fairly healthy camshaft in it, you don't have to have a tiny little camshaft in it to have it, be drivable. When you have a small motor, when you have a bigger motor, you can put more camshaft in it, so you can still have the low speed torque and have the power on the top. So it's just, it's just a win-win. So on NA stuff, that's why I tell people, well, should I de-stroke a 6-liter? No, you should stroke a 6-liter. You want it to be more. You want it to be bigger and better, and that's what usually happens. That's why a 500-inch Cadillac motor is so good, because it's 500 cubic inches, and they make torque, and that's why a bigger Buick motor is better than a smaller one. All of that stuff. So that's what I do like those, and like I said, I like them even more when we know that it's like on a big block Chevy, when we know that it's a 496 or 540 or 632, and then it has, if they went out of their way to put the steel valve covers on there with the 396 badges and stuff on there. That's just, just taking awesomeness to a little bit higher level. So let's see what you guys got going on. I'm working on another video, a couple of them right now. I have a lot of stuff that I had to get done, trying to get the Omni registered and stuff and get it ready to go over to the show. So I'm flying back to see the guys from the car farm who have been working very hard. And again, thank you guys very much for getting all that done. If you guys haven't taken a look, Ben has a video up. I promoted it on Instagram and Facebook. So if you guys follow me on Instagram or Facebook, the video's up for that, and you guys can take a look on the work that was being done, them doing the sanding and all that stuff to try to get this thing ready. It's going to look really nice. I'm very excited about it. So we got to get a poll going. Okay, have you ever disguised a stroker motor as a small or stock displacement combo? So have you ever told people it was a 4.8 or a 396 or a, I don't know, you could tell people on a small block it's a 265. I don't know that too many people would believe that, just because it'd be rare to see a 265. You tell people it was a 366 big block and they'd go, what? That people don't never even made those. I have a turbo LS 408 stroker making 1,022 at the wheels. I always told people that my 455 Ols was a Rocket 350. Nice. Richard, have you ever tested an exhaust that goes from 3-inch to 4-inch further down, or the other way around, going from 3 to 2-inch? On what kind of, are you talking about an NA motor or a turbo motor? What are you talking about there, Rides? What are some Mopar stroker engines? The 360 stuff can go to like 408s, and then 440s I think have near 500-inch deals that you could do with them. Guessing stroker engine is determined by changing the crank of an engine and not boring it. And typically that's what they're talking about, but most stroker engines that people actually talk about, like these, also had bigger bores as well. Anything, for me, it's anything that changes the displacement. Buying an 02 Yamaha SXR 700, been sitting for 5 years. Is it a runner? Do I hear a stroker mod motor test data? And D-stroke is using a shorter stroke crank. Yeah. Not rods. I mean, you can change the rod length if you want. You don't have to. But changing the rod length just doesn't change the displacement. Only the stroke length does. I have a 2016 Dodge Charger with a V6 Pentastar motor making engine ticking noises. Is it a vacuum leak, an exhaust leak? Is it a lifter noise? We got a stock 5.3. What can I do for starting performance mods? Usually guys do an air intake, a tune, exhaust. You could put headers on it. Cam is the biggest thing. You'll have to tune it again. What generation is an 85 Chevy 454 big block? I think an 85 is still a Gen 4. I don't remember when they started Gen 5. Yeah, first year of the Gen 5 was 91. So that is still a Mark 4. Still the original version, basically. Are there any Mopar builds in the future? Not builds, but the 360 will get some testing done. I'd like to build a 408 forged bottom end LS 823 rec port heads, Holly high ram to eventually turbocharge with a Trek Norris can be too small. You can take a look at the 408 video that I have up and see what the different cams did, because I have like 4 of them that we did, and you can see where you want your power. You don't need too much of a cam to turbocharge the motor, because the motor's ultimately going to make determine the power output. Rode in a 2016 SS Camaro. Nice car. Owner said it had a 6.2. For a 5.3 M122 supercharger is the TD. I don't know what TD, air to water intercooler, a must. An intercooler, I always recommend an intercooler with any form of force induction. Admiral, where are you going to find aluminum blocks for big block Fords? Bought a 416 stroker kit with the 11-degree valve. Can I still run stock LS3 heads on it? Does the valve relief is for 11-degree valves? You can put that on there. It's going to be determined by your camshaft. Let's see. You've made dual plenum intake manifolds. Have you tried divided plenum 180-degree firing order? You mean you want me to pair things in the firing order to a specific plenum? I don't think that that's going to do anything. I tried that actually on a Honda. We tried pairing the different cylinders because I made adjustable intake manifolds, a dual plenum 4-cylinder intake manifold, and I could swap pairs. And it didn't seem to change the power depending on the pairing on that 4-cylinder. That's for an M122 swap on a 5.3 is the air-to-water intercooler a must. I recommend having an intercooler. It's not mandatory. You can run a supercharger without an intercooler. You can physically do that. In fact, my Vortex supercharger on my Mustang that I drove around with for 85,000 miles never had an intercooler on it. It just limits the amount of power that you can make and limits the amount of boost that you can run on any given octane. I know this is off topic, but once we get to the question and answer, anything goes. You can ask whatever you want. What intake temps are catastrophic? There's no like, okay, at 213 degrees, you break everything. There's none of that. As you go up in temperature, your combination becomes more likely to experience detonation. But it has a lot to do with a lot of other things. So that is one thing, and that's not going to determine when you get into detonation. That's going to help you, and you shouldn't run lots of charge temperature. James, what's up? So I ran into a neighbor today when I was over getting gas in my truck, and I heard it drive in before I saw it. It was another, I think it was another Silverado. And it was a neighbor that I see when I go run, and he's got that truck, and then he's also got a turbo truck because I stopped and talked to him when Lisa and I were out one time. Lisa says, "Oh, great, here we go." But he drove up and was getting gas while I was sitting there getting gas, and I heard it, and I'm like, "Oh, that's." As soon as he drove up, I'm like, I didn't even turn around and look at him. I said, "Oh, that's not a stock cam." He goes, "Nope, it's not." And then I saw who it was, and he had his son or daughter in the truck with a big smile because they were driving around in like a cami truck. And he told me I thought he told me it was a 228R, but I thought he also told me that it was like a 550 lift cam. And I thought that the 228R was a 600 lift cam, but it did sound fairly cami. And he was telling me that he thought it was, a little soft on the bottom end, which a 228 cam, even though it's a single pattern. And his had, I think that they offered in 3 different LSAs. So I think that his was the tighter of the LSAs, which would make it more cami sounding, even though it's a single pattern. But a single pattern cam should at least be a little bit better down low compared to a dual pattern. But he said he thought it felt it was a little soft. So we're talking about all things. Hey, you could put gearing in it and maybe change the converter stuff. But it was interesting to see the stuff like in real life, right? Because a lot of times we do stuff on the dyno and we go, like, it does this. Yeah, it's all magic stuff. But to see it out there running around, and when I tell people, hey, that's pretty good size cam for like daily driving on that, and I'll get people on the other side. Oh no, I have that cam in mine. Mine drives around perfect all the time. And then you see them actually what they do in real life. You're like, yeah, and like his was all big smiles, and his child all big smiles, and it sounded great. And he was telling a story about he had pulled up to somewhere, some store or something, and some guy walked over, and the guy was looking around for like what kind of car was making that, because it sounded like a hot rod. And the guy's like, "No, it's this truck." He said, "It's running right now." He's like, "Oh, that's so cool." So, just car guys getting together and talking about it all. It's very, very cool. What's the best small block forward head for boost, including Hemi heads? I don't think that cylinder head for boost really is a thing. You would want the cylinder head that's going to help you make as much power as you can NA, and then you add boost to that, and it multiplies whatever you've made. But you would pick your cylinder head for something different besides boost, because that's not really a thing. 302 high performance on air cleaner, 342 under the bonnet. Totally want to do an LS383. Yeah, that makes a lot of power. 78 Z28 Camaro, blueprint motor, owned 2 years, went through 3 transmissions and 2 rear ends. I saw a I don't think this was a 78. I think that this was a mid. So I know this stopped for a couple of years. So this might have been the first year back on the Z28. It was the first or second year back after they stopped. Let's see. Yeah, I'm thinking that this was a 76. $75 maybe. Yeah, I used to know all this stuff. Taking a look at stuff here. I'm researching. So you guys can probably let me know here. There you go. Trek Norris cam, that's always a good. I think they do a 513 stroker for the 440. I knew that they had 500-inch stuff for the 440s. I've never built one, but a 400-inch small block Chevy with a 350 rotating assembly, make it a 377. Yeah. Get some gears first on the 5.3. That's what I was telling him, and my neighbor in the truck, that he had 342s in it, and he has put 410s in I think a 4-wheel drive deal that he did, and he was telling me how much of a difference it made. I said, yeah, in this truck it'd make a big difference. Changing rod length can help hurt depending on RPM range. I haven't seen rod length make a sizable change in power. 427 to 454, just a little clearance work. Yeah, for the FE stuff, you can do that. Was pretty common. Got a 56 Chevrolet 265 disguised 400-inch built Pontiac. It's kind of hard to disguise other motors as like a Pontiac for Chevy and that kind of stuff. I'm scrolling back. I'm trying to catch up. Big Block Chevy NA 565, 9.8 deck. An Edelbrock dual plane would probably be restrictive on a 565. Even for 5,500 RPM, I think it would be restrictive. That manifold was not designed to flow. That manifold was actually designed, oddly enough, for a 396. So I don't think it would be. I can go back and look at. I've run those on 496s. I haven't ever run one on a 565, but even on a 496, it was restrictive. Speedmaster makes a 460 aluminum block. I have a bad cam bearing, LS1 on a 2000 Firebird. It has a Torker V2 cam. What can I do on it? Can you fix the cam bearing? A lot of times when the cam bearing spins, the block's junk. So you need to look at that. I have a turbo LY6 running a 3-inch exhaust out the hood. To run the exhaust out the back, I have to transition from 3-inch down to 2.5 for a foot for clearance, and then go back to 3-inch. You're still going to get restriction on in that 2.5 on a turbo LY6, because if you have a turbo LY6, I'm sure you can make a lot of power with it. And the more power you're trying to run, the more restrictive that's going to be. Gen 454 was used in 1970 Chevelle SS. Yeah, and it was used in every big block even before that, from the 60s all the way up to 91, the Mark IV was. Does more cubic inches when you stroke it make a stroker motor? Can you handle bigger cams? Yes, and still be streetable. For the pole knot that I would have had, the hardware, I just never had a cool car when I was younger. Closest I came was a friend that had a Pontiac. It had a 350 emblem on it, but it was a 400. That would be good. You should have put a 326 on there, though. Robert, I don't think your 229 cam is going to have a problem with those valve reliefs, because it probably would fit with something that has a no valve relief. So I think you're probably going to be okay. You might measure it just to make sure. A tip for an Olds 403. It responds to the same thing that every other motor does: more head flow, more cam timing, intake manifold. Admiral John Causey makes aluminum blocks. Yeah, but not factory stuff though, right? Richard, what's the largest you would push out the bore on a 6-liter? I wouldn't go more than 30 on an iron block 6-liter. There's no reason to go bigger than that. The boost determines the power, not the displacement on that combination. I'd rather have the strength and the sealing. Or did a few 496 blocks for Can-Am. Yeah. Did Reynolds do those for them like they did for the Chevrolets way back? I don't think, I think it'd be really hard to find one of those, right? Richard's like the genie from Aladdin. Robin Williams was awesome. D-stroke turbo stick shift cars work great. What is the point where hotter oil starts to lose power? I don't know what that would be. I don't know that I've ever run oil hot enough to where we start losing power. I only have an L33 with 799 head, shave 30, sloppy stage 2 cam, cap rings. Can I stroke this? And what is the largest I can go? This is a 72 Vega. Yeah, you can. An L33 you could make into a 383 if you want. At what point is piston rod going to start having issues? That's why I don't, like on an LS application, that's why I don't go more than a 4-inch stroke on a stock sleeve block. Can you run Boss 429 heads on a 460? I don't know. Kazi would know. Built a 383 small block for my tow vehicle, put 32 ring gap in it, works well. And on the plus side, it's ready for boost. BP, you want to build a stroker for your Land Cruiser? What motor do you have in there? The only reason a head could be better NA but worse under boost is if casting will fail under boost. Yeah, if it has that's a good point. If it has a deck thickness issue, like the factory LS stuff will eventually have at some cylinder pressure. How much horsepower? Just roller rockers, stock LS1, ProFlow 4, EFI. So you got to tell me what ProFlow 4 EFI is. Is this a single plane intake manifold? Is it the high ram like ProFlow deal that Edelbrock sold? I don't know how they designate their stuff. They put the same names on a lot of different things. And does it have a stock camshaft in it? Because that's definitely going to hold you back. Rena said a C38 heads, but they do really good under boost. I've got a buddy with a similar combo, and it doesn't do well. Those heads will work very well NA and under boost, as most good heads do. That's a good cylinder head. A Yates head, especially if it's ported properly, will flow a lot, and it can support a lot of NA power, and so therefore a lot of NA power, it gets, makes more power under boost. That's how cylinder heads work. It's not that one head works good under boost and one head doesn't work good under boost. What will give you a really good idea is does the head flow enough, and does it flow enough to support a given power level, and does it make that power level? You have to have the other things with the motor to do that. So it's not just the head that would be the blame there. A Yates head's a really good, a race style head. How well do you think an M122 blower would work on an L72 compared to the 5.3 I have it on now? You'd make more power on the bigger motor. An M122 is limited in how much power ultimately it could support. Let's see. Still scrolling back. Our LS3 heads good on a 5.7. You're not going to be able to do that without lots of work, and they're not necessary. You want to make sure that you don't ask the same question a whole bunch of times. Otherwise, you'll just get kicked out. Wife is due. I'm just still trying to catch up. I'm not down at the bottom yet. I think I missed stroker talk. With strokers, am I worried about piston stability? You can, depending on how much stroke you have, but not all of them have that problem. Contemplating swapping out my LS swap for a different setup to be a bit different. I like that. Thinking of a Gen 3 Hemi, a big block, 650, 700 wheel horsepower and pump gas, boost, and a Hemi. You can do that. I have a 2005 GMC Denali, put a 408 stroker crank on a 6-liter and a stage 4 BTR cam. How much power does it make? I don't know. You have a lot of other things. I don't know what stage 4 cam you're talking about. I need a lot more information. .416, 11.5 to 1, 301 cam. Jason, in my opinion, there's no LS stroker specific cam tests. I have 408. I have a 408 that we ran lots of different camshafts in. You can take a look at that. I have 416s and other things I've ran other camshafts in. The LSA is not going to be specific to a stroker or not a stroker. It's going to be specific to what it does in the power band. No, I didn't. If I get the 454 from my stepfather's motorhome, maybe put it in a Camaro or Corvette or Chevrolet, yeah, that's a good place for them. They came they came with those originally. How's our poll doing? Have you ever disguised a stroker motor as a small or stock displacement combo? Only 39% saying yes. What will be an option for turbo 5.3 or 4.8? Do you mean, are you asking which one of those motors you can run a turbo on? You can obviously run a turbo on any motor. On either one of them, they both make good power. If I'm going to pick one of them from the wrecking yard, I probably would get the 5.3 just because it is going to be more responsive and stuff. '74, I think, is the last year for the Corvette for the big block. .270 horsepower LS4. Made a little bit more than the 250 horse L82 and a good bit more than the L48 350. And there you have it. What about the comparison of SB2 heads? An SB2 is an aftermarket performance race head. You can go with a 250 stroke on an LS motor. You can if you change the sleeve length. Doing an EFI to carb swap in a 91 Mustang GT. Should I stay with intake fuel pump with a regulator or tank inline pump or go old school mechanical pump? Well, you're going to need to reduce it down to low pressure to 7 PSI or whatever. Most people don't reduce that EFI pump down, although you'd have a lot of flow, if it's only supplying, if it's regulated down to 7 PSI, but you're going to have a lot of return on that to bring it down. The regulator that you use is going to be very important. Otherwise, you could get rid of that and just have a gravity feed to a lower pressure electric pump, which is a possibility. Or you could go old school and do a mechanical pump, but you might do the electric pump up to a surge tank up in the engine compartment, and then draw that from a mechanical pump. What's your opinion about rear mount turbos? I've tested remote turbos and they work, and a lot of times they're a good option for guys because they don't have, they have fitment issues, so they have to make it work there, and they still work. They're going to be not quite as responsive as stuff that's mounted closer, but quite honestly, they're all the ones that I've seen in operation are all responsive enough to make lots and lots of power. How come people never take EFI 351s and put a more modern? I'm thinking your EFI system on them. You don't need a more modern EFI system. The factory E4 works really well if that's what you're talking about, unless you're talking about putting a different intake manifold on them, and then that works good. I've run those 351s on the dyno; they work good. Like to do a Ford 351 stroker. 408s are pretty common. You can also do 393s and stuff. Would a larger cubic inch engine be less sensitive to higher compression? I don't know what you mean by sensitive. Compression changes motors regardless of displacement, roughly the same percentage amount. The bigger motor is just going to be making more power, and then so the gain that it gets from compression is going to be greater than the smaller motor would be. Because usually it's a percentage, 3 to 4% for every point of compression. So we're at 38%. Seeing Cleveland's out to 434 cubic inches. With the stock block, they go out that far? That seems like a lot. Ricky, I don't know how to answer that question because I don't know that displacement is going to change that. What is going to change the sensitivity to detonation is going to be things like what is the relationship between the combustion chamber size and design relative to the piston design. A lot of times with bigger motors, like we see big blocks, they have really big combustion chambers. And so they have to have really big domes on the pistons, which I don't think are a good idea. I think from a detonation standpoint, you'd be better off with a smaller combustion chamber and a flat top piston as opposed to having a dome piston. So I think that the displacement itself isn't the thing that you would talk about there, but the changes that were required because of it. Can a 454 be a stroker? Also, yes. 496 is the most common on a big block Chevy. How cheap can you build a 408 Windsor? You need to go online and just see what the 408 stroker kits are available for. Can we all agree that torque tuning sucks? What is the? I don't understand. What is torque tuning? What am I missing there? PavTech engines sell the very large Clevelands. Are they doing it with a 434? Are they doing that with an aftermarket block or something? Flawless, the biggest 496 is the most common stroker with a stock GM block. You can make bigger stroker motors than that with aftermarket blocks, really big ones. You could make 900 or 1,000 cubic inch motors if you build your own, if you make your own block, which guys have, like these mountain motors and stuff. Guys have built really big ones. Yeah, let me know. A 434 seems like it would be an aftermarket block. And then obviously a Cleveland head would work. A Cleveland headed deal is going to work really well because, like with the Yates headed comment, but that's essentially a Cleveland style head. But that sort of head can make obviously lots of power. So if you have that displacement and you put the other things in it, the head flow and the intake manifold and the camshaft, compression, dry sump, all of that, and it works really well. I'm trying to find the data, which I'm not sure that I have it anymore, on the test where I did testing when I did Engine Masters on the 410-inch motor. I did a test where we did some oil system upgrades. So we did a Mylodon pan and windage tray and stuff. And it did pick up a pretty good bit of power. I was pretty happy with it when we were doing the testing for Engine Masters. And I wanted to try to make a video out of that, but I can't find the dyno data because I think originally I was trying to hide all that stuff when I was doing the dyno data, because I didn't want because Brule wanted to tell all the other engine masters guys how much power my motor was making. It's just, kind of sneaky. Do 396 strokers exist anymore? Yeah, I think a guy can put a bigger stroker, like a 4100 stroker motor is not unusual. And then a 396 you probably could do with a LS3 block. But I don't like the 4100 stroke cranks or the 4125 stroke cranks on a stock sleeve length, because it really pulls the piston out of the bottom. I'm going with the Blueprint air gap intake for Ford. I didn't know Blueprint made their own intake manifold. Flawless, you need to go do some research. Go look up, go do a Google search for mountain motors, and you'll see they're a class of racing where guys make 600-700 or more cubic inch motors and run them NA and go very, very fast. Richard, how do you choose octane for a boosted intercooler combo 10.7 to 1? You would want to run as much octane as you can to make as much power as you can. I don't know how much power you're trying to make. I don't know what your intercooler is. I don't know what your chamber design is. I don't know what all that stuff is. But on something like that, I would run E85 on it if I'm running boost on it. Ryan, if you're trying to run a 10.7 to 1 427 with boost, you're not going to be able to make very much power and very much boost on 91, because you're going to have to take timing and or boost away from it. Plan on doing more videos on Gen 5 LS. The tuning is really kicking my butt. Yeah, and I'm not going to show you how to tune them because I'm not a tuner. But maybe I can get maybe I can get James Short to do something on that. That would be good. 434 Cleveland uses an aftermarket heavy-duty aero block. Yeah, I thought so. What about a 4-inch stroke on a 5.3 board to 3.905? Do you still have plenty of sleeve length? Yeah, but Dawson, I wouldn't build that motor if I'm going to run boost. I like I said, if you're trying to make 1,000 horsepower, I wouldn't go to 3.905. I wouldn't go to that big of a bore. I'd rather keep the bore strength in it. And that's not going to help you make power. You can take a 5.3 and put 1,000 horsepower turbo on it and top the turbo out and make 1,000 horsepower. You don't have to have a 383 to do that. I have detonation on 10.7 to 1 on 93 octane. See, a lot of it is your chamber design. Are the chambers softened? What is the air temperature going in? What is the water temperature? What is the piston design? There are so many things that are going to determine what is the camshaft. We've run I don't know if I've ever run the Ford one. I haven't seen that Blueprint one. FR185 probe flat top. That's a good combination. How stable do you think the factory LS rockers are? Well, guys use them on 8,000 RPM stuff, so I don't think that that's a problem. The reason behind this was that I have a Gen 453 stock stroke with a 3.905 bore currently. I would use that as an NA motor and not as a boosted one. I bought a 4-inch SHP dart block to build a 434 instead of a 425. Oh, so you got to you have to bore that thing a lot. What would you expect from putting a cathedral port cam with a rec port heads? You should take a look at the test that I did where I ran cathedral port heads and rec port heads with cathedral port cam and rec port cam, and you can see that that doesn't matter. I'll stick with the 85, just trying to find a pump now. It's a lot easier, cheaper for an A1000 at this point. Getting antsy, want to get my wheels going. E85 would definitely be what I would choose for that. You can make so much more power, and it's less money too, which is definitely a good combination. 91 would definitely be limiting on something like that. If I was going to build a 91 motor, I would make it lower compression. Yeah, there's actually no such thing as a rec port camshaft and a cathedral port camshaft. I know guys will tell me that I have the wrong cam in all the time, but what they haven't done is they haven't done actual tests. I'm not telling you that there isn't one camshaft that could make more power than the other, but if you put a camshaft in and it makes more power, like if you test two camshafts and one of them makes more power with the cathedral port heads, it will also make more power with the rec port heads. The rec port heads themselves will make more power than a cathedral port head if you were doing stock head, certainly, because the rec port head flows a lot more and it makes a lot more power. But the camshafts will respond the same on both sets of heads. Dawson, on an NA motor, a factory rec port head will make a good bit more power than a 799 head will. Do you have a favorite LS camshaft? No, I don't. The camshaft that you should choose should be based on the thing that you want to achieve. For me, I have a stock camshaft in my Silverado, and it's the best cam for that application. But depending on what you're trying to get done, a stock one or a truck Norris or something big with lots of chop, it depends on what you're trying to get done. That will be the camshaft that you should pick for your application. I just test all these cams so you guys have lots of stuff to choose from. Question: if you get a 4-inch crate, will that make more cubic inches? Will it equal more power? Yeah, a bigger motor will make more power than a smaller motor. I wasn't trying to get my build done this week. I'd send it over to you and let you spin it. In regards to my previous question about the 416 LS with the Comp 301 cam, would you look for putting a cam with more duration or start looking at upgrading from the stock LS3 heads? I don't know what you're trying to do. I think your question is a lot more involved than what you're stating there. A 416, the factory rec port heads could support 650 horsepower or more if you have everything else right on it, but ported heads will make more power. What's a good size injector for 600 horsepower? Is it an NA 600 horsepower or boosted? Is it E85? What is it? So if you want to get it for an NA motor, just take the injector flow rate. Like if you have a 50-pound injector and you multiply it by 16, that will tell you how much NA power the injector will support, or 8 of those injectors will support on a V8. So on a 50-pound injector, multiply that times 16, that gives us 800. They will support a 50-pound injectors will support 800 NA horsepower. Actually, they'll support a little bit more than that, depending on what the brake specific fuel consumption is. It's going to be better than what I'm putting there, but they will support that much power. And on a boosted motor, you have to take that number and then multiply by 0.85, and that will give you an idea. 1,000 cc injectors will support 1,000 horsepower boosted, but On E85, just barely. Ray, adding stroke or adding bore increases displacement, and more displacement will make more power. More equals more. Go ahead and close out our poll at 38% saying yes, that they have done some disguised trickery. For LS natural aspirated, what compression can you run? The static compression is not going to determine how much. The static compression isn't the only thing that's going to determine how much you can run on 93. There's lots of things. Dynamic compression. So if you have 12 to 1 and you try to run it with a stock cam, probably it's not going to work. If you have 12 to 1 and run it with that camshaft that Brian ran in at 454, you can run that on 93 because he did. It's also going to depend on that combination. Is going to depend on what kind of timing curve you have, what the water temperature is, what the air temperature is. He softened the chambers in that one. So there are a lot of other things that are going to go into answering that question. There's not an absolute thing. You multiply the injector size by 8 for a 4-cylinder. Yes. Is there a video you have on adding stroke? No, it's just math. It's just simple math. Go to Wallace Racing displacement calculator, and you can see what changing the stroke does. Stroke and bore both change displacement. Both of those things will add power. My 455 looks the same as my 350. That's the thing. You can, if you put 350 valve covers on it or decals on it and pass it off as a 350, that counts. That totally counts. So you put 307 emblems on your Camaro, on the outside of it. Slice. I don't know if the block, if Dart on their SHP stuff, if they make the blocks all the same, and then the 4125s are just bored from the factory, or if they started out with a different casting that made those bigger, and then the sleeve length is bigger. That's be a question for Dart. I'm not sure. How did you get into doing motors? I did it originally out of necessity because my Camaro motor got hurt. I had a ring break and cut a big groove into the cylinder, so we had to rebuild it. So my stepdad showed me how to do all that. Do I have any hot rods? Yes, I'm doing with the guys from the car farm, a 1985 Dodge Omni. We're making it into a GLHS of a 1971 240Z. Original owner, 5-liter 1988 5-liter LX Mustang. My father put 390 emblems on his dual quad. He should have put 352 emblems on it. I'm excited about going back to drive the Omni. Omnilicious. One more minute. It's the best mod for horsepower for my 72 Caprice. Does it have a 4-barrel carburetor? Does it have headers on it? Camshaft? All those things are good. My 440 Dakota still has the 3.9 emblems on it. That's perfect. Thinking it's a V6 is even better, right? 30 seconds. Hurry up. Get that in. It would be cool to have. I like the guys that are doing the turbo Mopar vans. I think that was pretty cool. And on that note, it is time to go. I will be back tomorrow. I've got some more videos going up tomorrow. I'm going to try to get one up tonight too. And then one also tomorrow. So I will see you guys all tomorrow.